This is the plaintiff, Bob. He says the defendant, his former friend, agreed to rent him his timeshare in Aruba, then at the last minute rented it to somebody else, probably for more money. He'd already purchased plane tickets based on the defendant's promise, and now is owed $1,053. The exact amount he's suing for today. This is the defendant, Gamal. He says he had to chase the plaintiff, his former college roommate, for the payment for the timeshare so he could get the paperwork from the resort to complete the transaction. After hounding him for the money, he told the plaintiff someone else was interested in renting the timeshare, and whoever check arrived first would get it. Unfortunately, the plaintiff's check arrived second, so he rented it to the other guy. He's accused of ruining a guy's vacation.
All parties, please raise your right hand. The People's Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marilyn Lee, I'm presiding. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Bob, you're suing your old friend, Mr. Gamal, for $1,053 because he had promised you that you would be able to rent his timeshare, and then he took that away from you. You tell me your version of the events.
Gamal and I entered into a agreement for me to rent his timeshare in Aruba for the same week in November as I did the year before.
All right, so you have a timeshare yourself in the same place, correct?
Yes, I do.
And you have week 45.
Correct.
And he has week 46.
Correct.
And you two know each other how?
We were roommates in college.
No kidding. You've known each other how long?
We've known each other since about 1982.
So last year you rented his place, and then the year before the event in question, you rented his place. And then this year in question, which is what, 2021?
Correct.
You ask him, can I rent your place again? What month do you do that?
I sent him a text message in June.
All right. And he says yes for the same price. If there's an increase, it'll just be whatever the increase is in maintenance.
That is correct.
Is there any discussion between the two of you of when your money is due?
No.
All right. But do you send the money in June?
No.
How about July?
No.
How about August?
No.
But you bought your airline tickets when? In June or July?
Correct. Yeah, in June.
Okay. So when were you going to get around to paying the money?
Well, Judge, last year, the year prior, I had sent him the check the same time around September.
Right. And I see the text from him to you last year saying, what the heck? Are you renting it or aren't you? You know, like it wasn't. You did that, but I don't think he liked it. I mean, right? Like he didn't enjoy chasing you, right?
Well, I don't think he was chasing me. I mean, I know him well, and I told him I was renting and I was going to pay him.
Let's see the text from last year. He sends you in July a bill for the amount. And we're talking about 2020. I got to pay the maintenance. Nothing can happen until the maintenance is paid. This is in Aruba, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But if someone else at this point in time is interested, I have to go with them, Bob. I've waited a long time, and I actually declined an offer. In August, a month later, is when you say, call me. I need to move money before you cash it. He doesn't get it until almost September, but I don't think he was happy about it because he was complaining about that in July. In any event, does he text you and say, I need the money?
No, he said, the conversation was, I need the money before to pay the maintenance fee.
Well, no, that's in 20. Now in 21, you buy your tickets in June, and July passes, August passes, and you haven't paid. In August, does he text you to ask you, where's your money?
No.
All right. So in September, does he text you and ask, where's your money?
Yes.
And what's the date that he texts you?
September 10th.
And what happens?
He had sent me a text asking me to send the check because he was leaving for Florida in 3 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. Then on the 13th, he wrote and said he was taking calls for the timeshare, and the first one to send him the check would be the renter. He also said he was giving me a heads up if I really wanted to rent the timeshare, I could still have it if I mailed the check. Now, I called him immediately.
What, immediately when? After the 9:10 text or 3 days later after the 9:13 text?
When I got the text message on the 13th.
What did you do when you got the text message on the 10th?
I didn't do anything at the moment.
Okay, so now when you get the threat on the 13th that you're going to lose it, then what do you do?
So I called him up and I reprimanded him and said,
You reprimanded him.
well, I mean, I told him, what are you doing? We're friends. I'm renting your place and I'm going to send you the check. I'll send it out. And I mailed it immediately that day.
Okay, well, what did he say when you reprimanded him?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay, Mr. Gamal, what was your response to him when he calls you on the 13th? First of all, do you agree he calls you on the 13th?
When he called me on the 13th, I did not pick up because when I called him on the 10th and told him my intent to do whatever, to rent it to somebody else, he threatened to beat me up.
Wait, what? You just said that he threatened to beat you up. That's what you just said, right?
Yes, what happened was...
Just a second. On September 10th, the only time I see you calling him on September 10th is at 8:28 in the morning. So if he threatened to beat you up, why do you send him a text 2 hours later saying send the check?
Well, I don't really remember the exact time when he
Well,
made
I
the
have
threat.
the exact time. The only time you called him is at 8:28 a.m. And you're telling me that on that day he threatened to beat you up. But I know that 2 hours later, you text him, send me the check. So I can't imagine he really threatened to beat you up. Because why would you send him that text then?
Well, because I wanted the money and I wanted to rent the thing out to get the thing out of the way.
Tell me all about how he threatened to beat you up at 8:28 in the morning.
Well, I mean, this is going back, but he got into a confrontation a long time ago at a gym with somebody. And he said, I'm going to do to you what I did to him.
Which was what?
Well, he punched him in the face, and when the guy was going down, he kneed him in the head.
So the guy threatens physical harm to you, and instead of just renting it to someone else, you say, hey, send the check ASAP, I need it, because I'm going to Florida?
Well, at that
I don't
point in
find
time,
what you're saying to be credible in the slightest. But you do text him in September and say, send me the check. He does nothing September 10th.
He does nothing.
Then I say, yeah, but don't embellish it, all right? Because then I don't trust the rest of it. Then on September 13th, you text him the following text. Bob, I am taking calls for the Aruba timeshare. First person to send me the check will be the renter. I think what you meant to say was the first person I receive a check from.
Correct.
Right. I am giving you a heads up because if you really want it, you can still have it if you mail the check. I have several other people interested. And according to him, he mails the check. When do you get the check from him?
Let me look at my paper. I got the check from him on 9/17.
Do you happen to have the outside envelope to see when he mailed it?
I do not have the outside
Did you mail
envelope.
it certified mail, Mr. Bob?
No.
Why didn't you just Venmo or Zelle the guy?
Exactly.
I'm asking you,
could,
Mr.
but
Bob.
I mailed a check like I did
Yeah, I know, but
last year.
If you already know that he's agitated and he's already threatening to rent it out, and isn't this like a really good time for you to pick up the phone, call him and say, what's your Zelle, what's your Venmo, what's your Cash App, what's your whatever, and get the money to him?
I mean, I could have done that, Judge, but I didn't really think it was an issue because, like I said.
When does something become an issue to you? Because the guy said, I don't know why you don't think it's an issue. Bob, please send check ASAP. I'll be leaving to Florida. You bought your tickets 2.5 months earlier. So why would you think that the place is yours just because, you guys were roommates 40 years ago?
No, and I rented it from the year before.
If he
and I
wasn't
told him
someone you knew and someone you had pushed last year, you would have sent the money to make sure you got the place, right? That's kind of the consideration for the contract is you sending the money. Now he's got to provide the place because you sent the money. But you were kind of taking advantage of the situation and just kind of leaving the money on your side of the ledger for as long as you could. You kind of blow the guy off in September, too, September 10th. He sends you that, and you don't even answer. Then he sends you September 13th, and then you call him. And the reason I don't think that you remember what he said is because he didn't say anything. Because I imagine that what happened is that you left a few messages. Does that sound more accurate?
Judge, what I think is he knows I'm good for the money. That was never a question. I had mailed it to him the year before, and never at any point was I need the money by a certain time, otherwise I'm going to have to rent somebody else.
Let's talk. Well, there is a point when that happens. It just doesn't happen as clearly as you just said. You're right. On September 13th, Mr. Gamal, you say to him, "You can, if you really want it, you can still have it if you mail the check." and he mails the check. He does what you say.
Your Honor, he did mail the check, but
Right.
I also told him that the first person that I would get the check from
That's not what you
would
said.
be.
I would prefer that you had said that. I would far prefer that you had said that and nothing else. I would prefer that your text say, the first person I receive a check from is who I am renting to, period. That's what I prefer your text to say. Because what your text says, and I quote, Bob, I'm taking calls for the Aruba timeshare. First person to send me the check will be the renter. And then it gets worse. Then you say, I'm giving you a heads up because if you really want it, you can still have it if you mail the check. I have several other people interested.
I started taking calls from other people because I was frustrated.
I don't blame you. But see, you and I would do business differently. I would tell him when he says, I want to rent the place, you tell him I need payment by August 5th. That's it. Just put a time limitation. Because, see, he's being messy because you're old friends. But guess who else is being messy? You're being messy. There's no, time limitation. And then you're angry. I don't blame you. It's been months. But put a time limitation that's clear, then he misses it, and then we move on. Or send a threat that's clear, as in, I am going to rent this out to whoever's money gets in my hands first, which is different from what you said. But worse than that, what you say is, I'm giving you a heads up because if you really want it, you can still have it if you mail the check. Listen, I think it's clownish how he gets his tickets in June and hasn't paid you in September. I think that's terrible. But my job is not to rewrite a new contract for you. My job is to enforce the contract you two guys achieve, you see? So is there a time limitation in your contract? You have no written contract. It's all verbal, and you never give him a deadline for the money. You just lose your patience in September. I don't blame you. But now when you say to the guy, if you really want it, you can still have it if you mail the check, and he mails the check, what then of your contract did he do wrong?
I don't know that we did have a contract because at the time when we agreed on this, no consideration was exchanged.
Here's a consideration. Stop. Here's the consideration. His payment. The issue is, was his payment late? Right? Because if it's late, then he breached the stop and listen.
Yes.
Then he breached the contract. The thing is, you had no deadline for the payment. In your agreement with him, he's like, good, I'm good to go. All right, I've got it confirmed. And then he doesn't send you the payment. You don't say, send me the payment by 3 weeks or else. Like, you don't have a deadline for him to send the payment. Then you create a deadline, bully for you, good for you. And in the deadline, what you say is, if you mail it today, you're still going to have it. And then he says he mailed it that day. And then you got it 4 days later. We know he mailed it because you got it 4 days later. But somebody else FedExed it to you, which is what you meant to say, I guess, whoever's payment I receive first. But
exactly.
Right, I understand what you meant. But then why do you say, I'm giving you a heads up? Because if you really want it, you can still
because
have it.
he was a friend of mine, and I wanted him to go there.
Okay, but then why do you tell him, if you tell a guy you still have a chance to mail it, and then 4 days later you get his check, I guess he mailed it. He did exactly what you said. And instead, in those 4 days, you gave it to someone else. How big a friend?
Didn't hustle.
And by the way, he's such a friend. He's the one who said he was going to beat you up?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm finding in favor of Mr. Bob in the amount of the $1,053 that he had to pay extra for other accommodations for that week.
So the plaintiff prevails. He's going to get the money, the $1,053 he sued for. Mr. Gamal, what are you thinking?
I don't really agree with the decision. I don't think there was a formal contract. It was an agreement.
What about the relationship between you two? I mean, you were college roommates. This goes back, over 30 years ago.
Yes. Well,
what's this going to do to that?
It's going to hamper the relationship. I mean, I don't think we can have the same relationship again.
Yeah, I would say so, especially when one of you says you're going to beat the other up. That's right. Going overboard, don't you think?
Yeah, I wish I had a tape recorder on my phone.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there. All right, let me see what Bob has to say. Bob, obviously you're going to get your money, but was it worth it? Because this has kind of put a fracture between your relationship with your former college roommate. What do you think?
I'm sorry I had to come to this. I mean, was a few dollars that he probably got from somebody else worth our friendship? I mean, if that's how he works, then I guess so.
All right. Well, bottom line, you've prevailed. You've prevailed. You got the money you were suing for, and obviously he's not a friend anymore. You won't be renting it again in the future, I would bet. You think?
That's
You agree
okay.
with that?
I
Yeah,
agree.
okay. All right.
I already have somebody else I rent from, so that's okay.
Okay. Good for you.
Doug, this is a case where the plaintiff relied on the defendant renting the place to him and bought a plane ticket as a result. Buying that plane ticket would be foreseeable damages in the event the defendant breached and didn't give the guy the condo, which is exactly what happened. That is why the plaintiff got the plane fare back as well.
The landlord is in Venezuela, the apartment is in Florida, and we're in New York. So how do we file a small claims case for my 98-year-old father-in-law?
Well, the question refers to a small claims case, but it really sounds like it's a landlord-tenant dispute because
Right.
he says landlord is in Venezuela, my father has an apartment in Florida. It sounds like if there's any type of landlord-tenant dispute, the proper jurisdiction and venue is in Florida.
Yeah,
That's where
it's
it
where
should
the
happen.
apartment is.
The county court for the county that they live in.
Right.
Right. And interestingly here, the landlord being overseas in Venezuela, it would be hard to serve process on somebody like that, perhaps. I don't know if there's a management company in between or if it's just the landlord who has the place. But if the 98-year-old grandfather is owed money by the landlord, he's got a remedy. Don't pay rent, I guess, until they get it
Yeah, because
squared
they're
away.
talking about being the ones who sue. So
Right.
I'm kind of wondering what it is that he'd be suing for.
Right.
But there are also, I don't know where in Florida, but there are also, 311 that you can call.
Right.
It depends on the city whether they have those kinds of services. But if there's something he's being deprived of, if they're turning the electricity off on him,
Right.
there's elder abuse hotlines.
There's state or local or
Yeah.
county authorities that can get involved in that and make sure that he's not, like you say, left to freeze to death. Not likely in Florida.
Not likely in Florida, but left without some service.
Exactly.